Good morning. If you're just joining us, we are going to get started in just a few moments. Before we do, we'll hear from some of our event sponsors this morning.
My grandfather started delivering home heating oil in the 30s, and my grandmother did the books. It is this entrepreneurial spirit that lives on in the company today.
We fuel 700,000 cars a day, over 20,000 trucks a day, and we heat 40,000 homes in the New England area.
The people that you work with are what fuels our engine. The people at Global heat homes, fuel cars, and power commerce throughout the country. My grandfather.
We love making life work.
Every complicated,
frustrating,
gratifying,
amazing part of it.
We're engineers,
scientists,
planners.
And no matter what we're doing,
working with clients,
taking on community projects,
or taking time for ourselves,
our goal is the same.
Make life better any way we can.
We design,
plan,
test,
and implement
every detail of the most complex
civil and environmental engineering challenges,
all under one roof
and across multiple disciplines.
We work here.
We live here.
We know all the local ins and outs of what it takes
to bring your project to life. But there's more to it than that.
It takes patience,
perseverance,
and just being human.
So we make ourselves available,
Give our undivided attention,
and only make promises we can keep.
We think that shaping the places that make life work
is the best work there is. Fuss and O'Neill.
creating works of life.
And if you're just joining us, we'll be getting started in just a few moments.
Amazing part of it.
The New Haven Law Office of Halloran Sage opened its doors in August 2011, and the past decade has been extraordinary. It is a privilege to be part of this vibrant and diverse community. We have sought out opportunities to contribute to the growth and success of the Elm City. We have engaged in stimulating work. This work is a reflection of our firm's history of legal excellence. Whether we are providing counsel to manufacturers and banks that impact the international economy, or to closely held businesses that are planning their growth. It is also gratifying to provide nonprofits, municipalities, and government agencies with work that has positively impacted our community and neighbors. We embrace this calling as a recognized public service. We've come to understand how to represent you and help you. It has been an exciting journey. We've grown and adapted and acclimated along the way, always with the objective of providing the best counsel to our client. We are a law firm that works in the present, and we are focused on solutions. Whether circumstances are anticipated, unexpected, or even turbulent, this city is full of potential and resolved to be a place where its businesses and all who live or work here can grow, thrive, and prosper. New Haven is strong, and we are connected to it and prepared to help move this city forward. We care, we understand, and we are here. Thank you to our clients, our business partners, and the civic and nonprofit organizations who have trusted in us over the last 10 years.
And again, if you're just joining us, we're going to be getting started in just a moment. We're hearing from a couple of our event sponsors as we let a few more people log into the program today.
Are you struggling to capture your customers' attention in under 30 seconds? Action! At Story Reel Studios, we create videos that help your brand immediately stand out from the competition. Our process starts with collaborating with you and turning your vision into a reality. We produce unforgettable stories that inspire your customers and deliver measurable results to your business. Call us today and let's bring your story to life. Are you struggling to capture your customers' attention?
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to our event sponsors. We'll list them all in just a little bit. You heard some of their announcements this morning as we got started and let everyone get into the program. This is our annual legislative forum presented by AT&T Connecticut and Southern Connecticut State University. We wish we could be on campus at Southern Connecticut State University. We appreciate them offering the space to us, but obviously the conditions with COVID continue to change. And so it made more sense to bring this to an online event. So because of that, we decided to break this up into two parts. We have so many great legislators that are willing to share their time with us. So this is part one this morning. We're going to have several of our state senators join us, and we are talking about investing in New Haven region's economic growth. We'll talk about a number of issues as well, but we want to keep that focus on how do we continue to invest in the greater New Haven region for economic growth so we can drive Connecticut's growth overall. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our board chair, Howard K. Hill, owner of Howard K. Hill Funeral Services, to say a few words. Howard.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Howard Hill, board chair of Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. As Garrett said, owner operator of Howard K. Hill Funeral Services, located in New Haven, Hartford, and Bloomfield, Connecticut. Wanted to thank our legislators, one, for all of the work that they do for this region in New Haven, and also wanted to thank you all for joining us today. We certainly are hopeful that this convening today will be of great value to you and your businesses. And we're looking forward to hearing from each and every one of our legislators. Thank you, Garrett, and I'll turn this back over to you so we can go ahead on and get started.
Thank you, Howard. We appreciate it. Great having you this morning. Now I'd like to welcome in our presenting sponsor, AT&T Connecticut. For the past several years, AT&T has sponsored this event, and we truly appreciate their continued support as we move to this virtual format for 2 years now. Let me welcome in John Emra, the president of AT&T New England. John.
Hi, good morning, Garrett. Good morning, everybody. Garrett, let me just start by thanking you for convening this morning's meeting and for the one that will follow here in a week or so. And thank members of the state Senate who are joining us. We have supported this event for as many years as we have, really because we think that that dialogue that happens between the public and private partnership, public and private sectors is so important. Some of the biggest, what seemingly are most intractable problems really are going to take a concerted effort and a partnership between both the public and private sectors to solve. And I think broadband is a really good example of what can be done and what we can do to help improve it. AT&T invests about $300 million over the last couple of years just in Connecticut on broadband. But there's a lot more that needs to be done. So the federal government has stepped up as part of some of the recent infrastructure bills have been passed, is going to bring in hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars more to help bring broadband out to those rural, remote areas, both in Connecticut and the rest of the country. And it's also doing things like creating the affordable broadband or affordable connectivity program, which is really designed to make broadband more affordable for low-income people who thus far really haven't been able to participate in the digital economy. And we're really proud to be part of that program so we can help to make broadband more widely available. And there's a lot more that needs to be done. States and cities have a really important role to play here in making sure that this vital technology is made available. We look forward to the conversation this morning and to hearing what everybody has to say. Thanks again, Garrett.
Great. Thank you, John. We appreciate the support. Now, it was 2020, just before the pandemic struck, that we changed our format. We were out on the Southern campus, had a great event with legislative leaders, all of our legislators actually sitting amongst everyone in the audience as we had breakfast. And so we thought we'd be back at that today, but we'll have to wait one more year. Proud to have Dr. Joe Bertolino, President of Southern Connecticut State University, with us this morning. President Joe.
Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate it. And thanks to the Chamber and our legislators for being with us today and for your service. Good morning, everyone. As Garrett mentioned, we were hoping to have you on campus, but I'd like to extend an invitation to all of you to visit our campus and consider us as a location, if you will, for meetings and gatherings. But please come by after the peak comes to an end or declines, and particularly when the spring weather hits. We are at Southern honored, as always, to partner with the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce and AT&T in presenting this forum. And as you know, we are a public institution that graduates more than 2,000 students a year, and Southern is proud that 85% or more of those graduates stay on to live and work in the state of Connecticut and in the New Haven area. We're currently getting ready for the start of the spring semester with the campus reopening next Wednesday. And we enter the semester with the same commitment to health and safety that we made last fall. I do have to say that one of the positive byproducts of the pandemic is that all of us have been forced to think in new, innovative ways. So recently, for example, we've added an array of health and education related master's degrees, along with cutting edge certificate programs. And our community partnerships with our area schools, nonprofits, and the corporate sector, they certainly abound. I think excellent examples of that are Biopath and the Obama Magnet University School on campus, two amazing programs and an amazing elementary school. So we look forward to the spring opening of our new Health and Human Services building, which will provide an array of clinical services for the wider community. And in particular, I wanted to point out that we take a great deal of pride in having served on the front lines in the midst of the pandemic. Some of you are familiar with CARE, the Community Alliance for Research and Engagement, which is based at Southern and affiliated with the Yale School of Public Health. It is drawing national attention for its efforts to improve COVID vaccine confidence and access in communities of color in New Haven. So providing access and serving the community, both critical aspects of our social justice-driven mission. It's what we do at Southern. I invite all of you to join and partner with Southern in ensuring both student success and helping to build the community. I'd like to again welcome our legislative delegation today to the forum, and I thank them for their continued support of public higher education. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you. And again, I hope that we'll be able to find our way back to campus to hold this and other events in the near future. Thank you, Garrett. Appreciate the opportunity.
Great. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. A big thanks to Global Partners, one of our event sponsors. We also want to thank Fuss & O'Neill, engineering firm here, Halloran & Sage, Alexion AstraZeneca, and Story Real Studios. All of these are sponsors, our event sponsors for today. Chamber has also been able to be a valuable resource in no small part thanks to all of our annual investors, and you see them on your screen right now as they slide before you throughout the pandemic, and even as we hopefully soon exit the pandemic. The support of all these companies and organizations has really been the way we've been able to do things here at the Chamber, so a big thank you to them as well. Well, we are ready to start talking with our legislators and about the issues facing Connecticut and the New Haven region. And our theme today is investing in our region. We believe strongly that New Haven, this region, is the economic engine for Connecticut. We support our state's other regions, but in Greater New Haven, we are surrounded by opportunity, and we feel like we need to leverage the strengths, the opportunities for economic growth that we have. That can be investments in infrastructure, education, our urban center, and people. And this will provide a tremendous return on investment for the state. So we're excited to have our legislators here talk about some of those issues around investment and many others. You'll find these concepts in our draft, or excuse me, in our legislative agenda, which is attached to our digital program. You can access it through the chat. We'll touch on many of these topics today, and it's my pleasure now to introduce Jim Perito, a partner at Haller & Sage and the chair of our Government Affairs Committee. He is going to be moderating our conversation. I'll be taking your questions in through the chat. I'll also take the opportunity right now to introduce all of our legislators that we have with us today. We have Senate President Pro Tem Martin Looney, Senate Republican Leader Kevin Kelly, Senator Christine Cohen, Senator Jorge Cabrera, Senator Paul Ciccarella, Senator James Maroney, Senator Rob Sampson, and State Representative Dave Yaccarino. Jim, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Great. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you all to our sponsors and to all our legislators who are here today. Let's get right into this. Senator Looney and Senator Kelly, I'll start with you all. As we come into our legislative session this year, what are the types of focuses that you each will think you're going to move into? About a minute, if you could, to talk about that, to think about what is your priority as you come into this year's short session. Senator Looney, can we start with you?
Sure. Good morning, Jim. Good to be with you. Can you hear me?
I can. I can't see you, though.
Oh. Yeah, so the host has stopped it. That you can't start your video because the host has stopped it.
Garrett, can you help with that?
I'm gonna help. I'm gonna.
There you go.
Okay.
There we go. Great. Great to see you. So again, if you want to head off on that direction.
Well, certainly we're going into the new session on February 9th. It will actually be the shortest of short sessions because we begin the session on the first Wednesday after the first Monday in February. And this is the latest possible start date, February 9th. And we have one of the earliest possible end dates because we end on the first Wednesday after the first Monday in May. So we have exactly 12 weeks. Other years we have closer to 13 weeks in the even year session. So everything will be accelerated. Committee deadlines will be somewhat truncated. As always, we will be concerned about promoting economic development. I think it's important to continue a focus on job training to make sure that we subsidize job training programs, especially those that have a good track record. I think we have a history over the years of too many job training programs did training in a vacuum rather than connecting people with real employment. We need to work on that. In terms of promoting economic development, I think we also need to make sure that we have sound standards for decisions that might be made in terms of tax deferrals or tax abatements for businesses that are looking to grow and expand in certain areas. Those decisions can't be arbitrary. There was a debate recently in the New Haven Board of Alders about the standards for abatements and deferrals that should be applied to proposed developments. I think good metrics have to be adopted. I certainly endorse what John Emmer said and what about the need for expanded broadbands, and so many of our businesses are going to rely upon that in the future. And again, I think it's time to continue to try to promote regional cooperation because we have too many instances, I think, where development in Connecticut is held back because of the overly parochial view of municipalities, rather than looking at things in a regional perspective or allowing an area of the state to market itself as a region rather than town by town. So that in term, and also looking at budget adjustments that may be necessary. We've of course adopted a 2-year budget in the 2021 session. That budget is always adjusted in the even year session.
Great, thank you. Senator Kelly.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to address the chamber. It's always great to get people together and to share ideas. I think that's what our democracy is all about. I think first and foremost, when we look at this upcoming legislation, we first need to do no harm. Connecticut's economy is not performing for its businesses or families. We're dead last in job growth. We're dead last in income growth. And we have a 40-year high in inflation. And so I think it's incumbent on our government to start to look at the struggles and the sacrifice that taxpayers and job creators across our great state are making and have been making. And the budget itself should not benefit from that sacrifice. And we have a windfall right now because of inflation. So I think we need to start to give back, quite frankly. And we've proposed, first and foremost, tax cuts with regards to the sales tax. I think that's important. We need to make Connecticut affordable. And one of the great ways to start looking at that is to make sure that the promises of the affordable health care are met and that people can afford health care. We need to make our communities safer. Right now, I think across the state, safety and security in one's own home is being threatened. And we need to look at initiatives to roll that back and bring people the peace of mind that they deserve. We need to make Connecticut healthier and look at initiatives in order to do that. Bring transparency to the process. We need to get the legislature involved. Whether it's, I'm going to say, COVID relief funds. We know what happened in West Haven with regards to that federal aid that we were entrusted to make sure got to those families most in need, as well as the federal infrastructure. I mean, that is a once in a lifetime opportunity to not only invest in our transportation, but to make sure good, hardworking families in Connecticut get jobs and to improve our economy to make it work better. And to do more workforce development. I think we also have to look at what we do well in Connecticut, like defense contracting and insurance, build on those jobs and branch out. So we have a lot of things to do, all positive, but I think it all starts with first doing no harm.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open this up to everyone here on the panel. As you know, we had to pivot to an online format today because of the rise of the Omicron variant. And all of our communities are feeling a threat from this. It's impacting on labor shortages, loss of customers, increased supply chain issues. Where do you see this heading in the next few weeks? And how do we tackle COVID moving forward once we get over this most recent spike? And I'll open it up to anyone. If Senator Kelly, if you want to start, that's fine. And we can open it up to the panel.
Sure. I think what we have to do is look at where we are. No doubt the Omicron variant is more, I'm going to say, contagious. Hopefully it's less deadly, but we have to keep our eyes focused on the science and metrics. That's one of the concerning issues with regards to at-home testing, is that it takes those numbers out of the system. And so part of this is, how did we get here? Obviously, I can remember the day when we were able to get an appointment to get a test, and you could get your results in the same day, if not 48 hours. And that seems to have gone away. And what we need to do is be ever vigilant to make sure that all the safety precautions are in place, but at the same time, get back to work to make sure that our economy and our people have an ability to get a job and to move forward. So I think that's what we need to look at and focus on as we go forward, and make sure that the legislature gets back to business and get the people back in under the dome.
Anyone else want to weigh in on the COVID issue?
Jim, I think that what we need to do is be aware that we have to perhaps pivot quite frequently. The level of acuity of the disease varies greatly. We're in a very different position now than we were 5 or 6 weeks ago. We now have almost as many people in the hospital as we had at the peak back in 2020. Although in many cases they may not be as gravely ill. We need to continue to promote vaccinations and mask wearing. I just don't understand why, with the demonstrated efficacy of the vaccinations, how many people are still not fully vaccinated. The bulk of the cases in the hospital and most serious cases are unvaccinated people. And we also need to make sure we make an aggressive effort to get the high quality N95 and KN95 masks in everyone's hands, because they have a much greater benefit of protecting people if they are going to be in group settings than the cloth masks or other masks that people may be using.
Do either one of you see the kind of mandated shutdowns that we had at the first time this all came about by the executive orders?
I think only if things became appreciably worse than they are now.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in? I can't necessarily see your hands. If you want to, you can just sort of jump into it. No? Okay. I want to move on to bioscience. Senator Cohen, the bioscience industry centered around the greater New Haven area has the potential to grow even more and become a national hub of bioscience research, development, and jobs. We've seen a number of local businesses that are very much into the testing, are putting forward products that could be really phenomenal projects for the country, and they started here in Connecticut. What are some of the steps that the Bioscience Caucus and the legislature can take in this upcoming session to help that part of our economy grow?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I appreciate the question. And I suspect because I am one of the chairs of the Bioscience Caucus, that's directed at me. I know Representative Yacarino's on as well, and he co-chairs that caucus with me. And I think there's a lot that we can do. This sector was exploding before the pandemic, and more than ever in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, we see how important our bioscience sector is, not only to our economy, but to our public health. And so we need to do whatever we can to help these guys grow and innovate. We have the innovators right here and a pipeline of talent from our premier institutions, our colleges. And what we need to do as a caucus is really listen. And that's what we've been doing, hearing that, space is an issue for bioscience companies, hearing that workforce is an issue for bioscience companies. This past session, we did a lot of work with this sector together with the Commerce Committee. Senator Hartley has been a fierce advocate of this as well, and worked on expanding the R&D tax credits, which we knew would be so important to this industry. So now those will go up to 70% of the tax due, where in the past it had been 50%. We need to continue in that vein and make sure that we're really listening to the industry, understanding what their needs are. I think the expansion of Tweed is huge for this industry and the businesses around. We heard that over and over again for many years, how important and vital transportation is to ensure that they get the workforce that they need, that they can fly in and out for various meetings with investors and different companies to collaborate. And so I'm really pleased about the direction we're going in. And I think for us as a caucus, it's really about listening and understanding how we can take it further and make sure that we're allowing this sector to grow and thrive.
You mentioned Representative Yacarino. Hi, it's good to see you here.
Morning.
Do you want to comment on this since you're on that committee?
I would. It's been my passion. I've been in the legislature for about 11 years, and for the last 7 years, it's been my passion to grow New Haven County. Not because I live in New Haven County, but we have the great Yale University, Southern Connecticut University. Gateway does a good job, although small, University of New Haven, and we have the workforce. And unlike New York and Boston, we have the space. We have the corridor between Upper Fairfield County all the way through the shoreline. So we have great advantages. I think we didn't take advantage of it in the past. And I think the last 5 or 6 years, we've taken advantage of it between the Bioscience Caucus, Commerce Committee. Senator Cohen mentioned Senator Hartley. Joan and I worked very hard with past Senator Franz on growing the bioscience sector through tax incentives through venture capital to grow more venture capital in our state. Massachusetts, about 11, 12 years ago, put hundreds of millions of dollars between state government and academia into the science community. And we've been slowly doing that in Connecticut. And what we did in last year's, I think, biennium budget, we reinstated part of the R&D tax credit. The governor had, I think, cut out 2 years prior, year prior. That was important for, and Senator Cohen had mentioned that. That's important for our science community to see that we're serious, Connecticut's serious. We have the universities, we need to act as far as tax policy and embracing this industry. I think we could rival any state in the country, but we have electric boat, we always talk about manufacturing, which is a very important, insurance and electric boat, but science is the future. If we didn't have science, we would have not have tackled COVID in the way we've tackled it. And I think we need to embrace that. And they're high paying jobs. You could come out of high school and get a job making $60,000 a year just as a tech. And those many times these companies send you to school and you get your bachelor's degree and then master's degree. So I think we need to embrace it. If you look at the last 6 years, we've grown thousands of jobs in Connecticut through the science community. And real quick, back to the how do we tackle going forward to Omicron. The federal government, excuse me, really dropped the ball in October with testing. No disrespect to the Biden administration. They miscalculated. They thought we were pretty much over. Viruses mutate constantly. You can't, this isn't over, but we could stabilize it. And I think it's testing, being vigilant, people getting vaccinated, but being vigilant, and businesses have to stay open and thrive. But it's really through science and common sense, I think. So
you, on that issue, you would have advocated just having more tests available primarily.
I think that's not going to stop it's not going to stop the virus, but it protects people. The federal government miscalculated, and listen, I think we all thought maybe it might have been over, but we don't have enough between the company Abbott, the federal government. I think they miscalculated. But we all make mistakes, but going forward, there's no reason the greatest country in the world can't have enough testing distributed to every state. I don't believe you should tell people how to live their lives, but I would hope people get vaccinated because it does work. But that's the personal choice, but it does work. It proves it works, and get boosted if you could. But it's working with the federal government, working with states and people doing hopefully the right thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment on the bioscience concept? No? All right, let's move on to education and manufacturing. Senator Ciccarella, looking to see where you are.
How are you?
Oh, there you are. I don't see your assistant with you right now. Did taking a message?
Oh yes. My little cousin, his mother had to go back to work early. She's a nurse, so my wife is helping out. And I got lucky to hang out with him for a few minutes. He may come back. So
part of mobilizing our workforce is to strengthen the workforce talent pipeline by supporting initiatives that prepare our workforce for the academic, technical, and skill expectations of today's workplace. What actions, if any, do you anticipate that the legislature will take this year? And is there a possibility of expanding manufacturing high school programs? So sort of a two-part, if you can think about that.
sure. So workforce is something I'm really passionate about. Here in my district, Wallingford has a great pipeline of workforce development. Sal Menzo and a few other individuals, especially at a state level. I believe even Todd Birch, he is the apprenticeship director, also had a hand in kind of creating this pipeline to get high school students, not jobs out of high school, but careers. And I think that we need to expand on that, so we can help the students that do not want to go to college for whatever reason that may be, and help the economy by helping these businesses that need workforce, talented workforce, that want to have careers and longevity in these businesses. I believe it was Representative Yacarino that stated, you come out of high school making $60,000 as a tech in bioscience. In manufacturing, in a couple of years, you could be making $80,000, $90,000 a year. And manufacturing isn't what it was, working in a dark dingy factory. It's working in a computer setting and printing cell phone cases and just about anything else around your house in manufacturing. So I think it's imperative at a state level that we support the schools and the businesses. And I've had numerous conversations with superintendents, other nonprofits like Hubcap in Wallingford, Joe Myra, and a ton of businesses that have expressed the need. And when I talk to the schools, they identify their challenges. When I talk to someone like Todd Birch in the apprenticeship department with the Department of Labor, he tells me what his challenges are. And it's amazing how we could bridge that gap. And I think that bridge comes in the form of money. The schools, unfortunately, don't have the resources. These Perkin grants are not big enough to build these large rooms and buy equipment. And more importantly, find certified teachers that are experienced in whatever field it may be, whether it's manufacturing, electrician, plumbing, etc. So these are the challenges that the schools have. In the apprenticeship department, they have a problem with finding the students, which the schools have the students. And we just need to get a way for the Department of Education to maybe model some curriculum that the schools could use. We could get the students with the apprenticeship programs, which have an abundance of businesses and trades that need these apprentices and individuals that are ready to go into these areas of workforce. But the bridge there is that money, and there is $110 million that is available for workforce. And I attended a meeting just a few days ago, and they talked about some of the areas where they'll allocate that money. But we need to focus more on the students and bridging that pipeline. And I'm passionate about it. As I said, I belong to a nonprofit, the Joe Bate Charitable Foundation, and one of the biggest things they do is ignite talent. And what we do is identify those students that may not be college bound, and we help the guidance counselors find those individuals and get them in internships and micro internships to identify areas where they may be interested in, so they could come out of school, not have to go to college and end up doing something different that they didn't want to do anyway. So I hope that answered your question, but I am excited to move that ball down the road and continue to connect the departments and cut through some red tape so we could get these students careers.
What would you think is sort of the biggest impediment to bringing the students to sort of get hands-on apprenticeship or internships with the companies that they may ultimately be employed by? Is it the labor laws? Is it transportation issues, getting students to these places? I mean, what seems to be the biggest block of getting the kids over there?
So the schools always thought, in all the conversations I had with all the superintendents in my district, is trying to create these learning atmospheres within the building. I think that model's not going to work. There's not enough money. And I think that maybe the Department of Education, and I have a scheduled meeting with them to discuss a possible model curriculum that these schools can utilize that would allow them to let the students leave the schools, maybe their senior year, to go work at these places. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I know there's a need at school level. There's a need at these businesses and trades. I mean, the unions are paying students to go to school. So you'll literally be an apprentice, get paid to be an apprentice and learn hands-on, and then they're paying you to go to school. So there's a need on both sides. It's just bridging that gap. And transportation also is part of that. I don't think you could use Perkin funds for transportation. So I think it's cutting through some of that red tape.
Thank you. Well, good luck with that this year. Hopefully you can help sort of move that forward, because it's needed on every level. I had a question for Senator Winfield, who unfortunately could not be here. And I'm going to throw this open to anybody who wants to delve into it. And this is really about inclusive growth, something that our state has been trying to grapple with over the past couple of sessions. It's vital to ensuring that economic development is occurring in all areas of our communities. There continues to be a need and for capacity building with an emphasis on expanding access and opportunity. Are there any legislative priorities for this session to build on inclusive growth that you see coming up? If anybody wants to.
Yeah, well, I'll step in on that. Well, first of all, one of the things that we're looking at is try to promote more diversity in terms of housing, in terms of the kinds of economic development. I think the concept of transit-oriented development is something important to promote commercial development around transit hubs, whether bus stations or railroad stops, to allow for perhaps greater density of development in those areas. And of course, affordable housing continues to be a challenge in Connecticut. Is that so many communities have very little affordable housing, and in a state as small as Connecticut, that's a very stark contrast when you have communities virtually next to each other with an extraordinarily different racial and ethnic mix. That's really not healthy for our state. We need to find a way to build greater diversity and overcome the amount of opposition that always seems to arise when that's proposed. We need to look at a greater variety of housing stock. We also need to look at promoting development in certain communities that have very little of it. One of the challenges, of course, we have is that our cities that are open to development, most in need of it, they are very small in area, which is a challenge. City of New Haven, City of Bridgeport, City of Hartford are very small in area. So the place for available development there is always challenging, even when there's a proposal. There are other towns that have much more space to do so, But if they are going to accept development, it has to be done in a way that is, I think, a positive element for the entire state, and not something that that sets off one community or one region of the state against another.
Thank you. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, Jim, Kevin Kelly, the thing that I think we need to look at also is, particularly when we're looking at a safer Connecticut, is making sure that individuals have an opportunity to a profession other than something that might have a criminal element to it. And in order to do that, and I think Senator Ciccarella, obviously his insight and leadership in manufacturing and workforce development, I think is key here. He hit the nail on the head that we have to bring these opportunities to our students. We need to bring these opportunities to our communities and to make sure that they have the opportunity to be exposed to these types of jobs, because as he indicated, you can earn up to 6 figures in a good manufacturing job. And so when we look at that, I think what we need to do is make sure there's summer opportunities, make sure that the educational institutions work with students to expose them more so than just VOTEC, and looking at our not only our defense industry, but also the supply line manufacturers to do that. Senator Looney's right. We need affordable housing. But really, when you look at affordable housing in Connecticut, one of the biggest impediments, if not the biggest impediment, is that the cost of housing rises faster than people's wages. And we need to create an economy that works for its people. Right now, we're in a K-shaped economy where the people at the lower end of our economy are not having the earning power. And we need to change that. We need to create these good paying jobs. We need to make sure they're accessible and available, and provide the much needed mentorship to make sure that individuals participate. And I think that's our challenge, is to make that our government work for its people and make sure that these job opportunities are available for everyone, particularly our cities, because as our cities go in Connecticut, so goes our state.
And following up on that line of question there, Jim, we had a question in the chat, and when we talk about workforce opportunities in our marginalized communities, how do students get to those types of opportunities if they're at a huge education gap, especially after what we saw through the pandemic, where a lot of students were not able to attend school? If they can't envision those opportunities, how do we get them to there, and how do we reinforce education in the state? We'll throw that open to anyone who wants to jump in.
I think what you wanted,
Garrett, I was going to answer the last part of the last question. Dave Yacarino, did you hear me?
Yes,
we can.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
Try to answer both. What nobody mentioned for cities or anybody, when I was on the Commerce Committee, we always try to infuse money into cities through the state, which doesn't work. So it's private institutions. And what's happening in many cities or poor areas or people with bad credit, they can't get capital. If you can't get capital, it's hard to start a business. And if you don't have, say, in urban areas, or if you don't have local businesses, it's hard to have growth. But we have Southern on this panel today. They have a great program for high school and college for internships and jobs. And many times there's just lack of communication. What Senator Ciccarella mentioned about the manufacturing and the trades, those programs are here. It's just getting from point A to point B. And Senator Ciccarella's on the right track. It's communication. For 11 years, we've been talking about this, probably for 20 years. There's access, there are programs, it's not coordinated. As far as, it's just not. I believe that's just not that complicated. And it goes to the sciences. There's so many jobs here for trades to start in these companies. That's one of the reasons I push it. I did fail to mention Quinnipiac and UConn, by the way, before. But back to your question just now, we don't know what's right now with virtual learning. There's still ways to communicate. It's actually easier to communicate now than ever. It's just having that coordination. But what we're not talking about for the high school kids or middle school kids is the mental stress for the school students, teachers. So we have to get through that first. But I think it's communication and coordination and having that fortitude to move forward. And it's easier for me to say because I've gone through things, but for kids, they have to have that communication between their guidance counselors, their teachers, through workforce programs. And we have to, just hopefully that continue to learn in person and have programs to move forward. But back to the first question, is capital. Many times there's no capital. And if you just simple that, you know, that has to be one of the biggest reasons. It's capital.
Thank you. I'm going to jump to Senator Cabrera, who has his hands up and actually was next on my list for a question. So it works out well. You wanted to comment on which question? I lost you there.
Thank you. Thank you for good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for gathering us here. I'm sorry we couldn't be in person, but hopefully next time. I just wanted to add a little bit about the workforce development discussion. I think one of the things that's really important with workforce development in my district in Derby, we were able to procure some funds for an advanced manufacturing program at Derby High School. And one of the things that became pretty evident to me quickly is how critical it is for many of these students to have wraparound services. Issues like transportation are a barrier for many of these young people. They're also navigating a host of other challenges. So it's really important to make sure that these students have these important wraparound services so that they can get to the program, mentors so they can finish a program, and a lot of supportive services. I think we're at an opportunity here in Connecticut. We're in a very exciting time. The infrastructure bill, which was historic, which was referenced a little earlier, I think this is a huge opportunity. Broadband was mentioned, which I think is very exciting as well, to make sure that we have the roads and bridges and infrastructure to support our business community. One thing that I'm concerned about and I'm looking forward to having a robust conversation in the legislature is making sure that the state government has the adequate staff and experts at the ready so that when we do begin to receive these funds, they can be implemented and out the door in an effective and timely manner. So that's one. The other piece I think is really important, and it was alluded to a little earlier, is the immense challenges we all have regarding mental health. We all know what the consequences have been of this pandemic. We're seeing record numbers of, especially our young people, struggling with all kinds of mental health challenges, whether it's depression or anxiety or suicide. And, last session, we did a very large investment in supporting our mental health infrastructure, but quite frankly, we need to do more. And I think this impacts the business community because when you have children or adults who are struggling with mental health issues, that's lost days at work. That's employees not producing at a high level because they're distracted or because they're struggling. And so I'm looking forward to having that robust conversation. So just wanted to bring out those points.
And actually, the next question I have for you, and you raised it, was transportation, because transportation is key to our area. It's an opportunity for an amazing amount of growth in the greater New Haven region. Senator Cohen indicated about Tweed, which is very important. That's our air transportation arm. With the incoming federal dollars from the infrastructure bill, are there specific projects that we are able to prioritize and have them sort of shovel ready as that comes through? You mentioned needing the state staff to be there at places like DOT and whatever to make sure we can move stuff out the door. But are there specific projects on the transportation end that we think that this year we can be able to actually sort of earmark some of that money for?
Yeah, so I've been a proponent, and I know many on this panel have as well, for the Waterbury train line, which is really an important development, and we've made some progress here. That's something that's really important that affects the entire region. There's several projects in Derby, some transit-oriented development with some mixed-use housing that's really important. I think the one concern I have is making sure, as I mentioned at the top, is making sure we have the staff and the experts. That's one of the things I'm hearing from my chief elected officials in my district is concern about the timing and making sure that we have the requisite staff. So Waterbury train line is a big one, and there's a bunch of host other projects I can't remember at the moment, but those things are really, really important. I'm hoping that we can have the adequate implementation for that.
Great, thank you. Okay, so our next question is for Senator Maroney. Look to see where you are on my screen here. There you are. Okay. So labor shortages. Mobilizing our workforce seems to be one of the largest issues for our businesses. With the highest unemployment rate in New England and an uptick in the COVID cases, Connecticut businesses continue to face alarming staff shortages at every level. What do you view as possible solutions to address the labor shortages and strengthening our workforce? And this has been a continuing theme that all the senators and Representative Yacarino have been talking about this morning. Do you have specific insights because you're on that committee?
And thank you very much for the question. Apparently my strategy of staying quiet you didn't forget me, so.
We never do. Never do.
No, but I just want to echo my colleagues. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and as Senator Cohen had said, really, it's what's most important for us is listening, and so these meetings are very valuable for us to get together with the boots on the ground, right? The businesses in our area to hear what are your issues and how can we work together to solve them. One of the issues that in terms of workforce shortages that was actually referenced by Senator Ciccarello was, experienced teachers, right? And we know we're coming on a retirement tsunami. And I think it's been accelerated, some of the retirements by the pandemic. So how do we get more experienced teachers? I think we do need to look at ways of expanding the alternate route to certification and looking at how we can get more mid-career professionals shift over to being teachers, because we can't graduate enough students, right, to fill those needs. And for a lot of these jobs, we really cannot graduate enough students to fill them. And so we need to look at, the mid skill, you would call them. How do we upskill some people who maybe graduated high school, have some college or don't have anything there? How do we get them to return? I think one of the ways is looking at, as we mentioned, wraparound services, right? In terms of a lot of times the reason why people drop out of school and don't complete is because life happens, meaning that the average American can't afford an emergency of $400. So you may have someone in a community college in a high, a certificate program, and the advanced manufacturing, some of the coding, some of these are short-term education programs that lead to high-paying jobs, but maybe your car breaks down and you can no longer finish. So we need to look at what are the services we can wrap around. Or childcare is a big issue for a lot of people. And I think the pandemic has especially impacted women. I think I've heard it was like 20% of childcare slots have closed, right, due to the pandemic. So how do we create an access to childcare? I think transportation is a big key. When we look at the growth in the schools, a lot of suburban school districts are shrinking right now, but most of the urban school districts are growing. How do we get the people from there to where the jobs are? Right. And you look at that, I think it's 40% or so of residents of New Haven who do not have a car. So how do we create mass transportation, right? And how do we improve our trains? So I think Senator Cabrera had mentioned the Derby line. I think on the New Haven line, how do we get more trains running more frequently? We know that there are a few major issues, the walk bridge that needs to be fixed to increase the speed. We know that the bridge over the Housatonic River in my district, connecting it to Senator Kelly's district, it's over 100 years old. These need to be replaced. There are 4 bridges over 100 years old that trains need to slow down to go over. So we need to repair that. We need to add back the 4th track. There's a short line along Milford where it goes down to 3 tracks. There aren't 4 tracks. So that would allow us to get more trains running so we can achieve a goal of having 3 trains an hour. So pretty much the train becomes more like a subway, and that you're not as worried about the schedule. You just go to the station and get there. But, looking at what are creative ways, I think the Office of Workforce Strategy was a great innovation or a great addition to have one agency who can cut across the silos. I think Senator Ciccarello also referenced that as a problem, right? We have a lot of great things going on, but there doesn't always seem to be the communication between those areas. So one thing I'm interested in that they're called career impact bonds. So you may know of the Holberton School in New Haven, which does an income share agreement, right? You go to the program and then you pay back from a percentage of your income. But what they've done in some other states is it's an income share agreement plus. They've added the wraparound services, that there's a social worker, that they have a fund for emergency loans. In Oregon, they actually paid the housing while you were in the program, a program to get women into coding. And so my understanding is that we are investigating those career impact bonds. And so one of the issues too is that for the workers, if you're going to go to these programs, you have to, all of the risk is on the worker, right? And that they have to pay for the educational program and hope that it leads to a job. This kind of de-risks those programs for the worker, in that they only pay it back when they do get a job. right? So they can go into the training and you add some of those other supports. And again, just back to that transportation being a big barrier, we look at, the great program like the Skill Up New Haven, right, to get people into starting in manufacturing jobs. But what I've heard is that, 80% plus of those people who finish that program don't have a car. And so how are you going to get to a lot of the smaller manufacturers who would hire these people who desperately need them aren't on a train line, right? Or they may not be on a bus line. So how do we coordinate? And buses are obviously easier than trains because you don't need to lay new tracks. So how do we coordinate? We have 15 transit districts throughout the state, right? So how do we coordinate our transit districts to make it easy? And I think one of the, the announcement of that, expansion of the UPass, that employers can get in on that now to provide transit passes for their employees is another great thing we're doing. So there are, a lot of problems, but as Senator Cabrera said, it's also a very exciting time. We have a lot of opportunities ahead of us with the infrastructure money coming in. It's the first time that we do see stability in our budget going forward. And as you know, businesses need that predictability and stability. So.
Thank you. I have two hands up here. Senator Ciccarella and Senator Kelly. Paul, you want to go first?
I think I should let Senator Kelly go first on this one.
Okay, that's your call.
Well, thank you. What I just wanted to comment was both, Senators Cabrera and Maroney have brought up good points here with regards to transportation. And what we need to be is a little forward thinking to make sure that we use this once in a lifetime opportunity and to try to avoid labor shortages. Be proactive. We're going to, Connecticut's not the only one getting these federal funds. There are 49 other states that are going to be in the same situation and competing for the same workforce. So what we need to do is start planning now. And that's why we need accountability on these federal funds, is to bring these perspectives, the people's representatives to the table, not just the executive, and make sure that we have oversight. We've identified infrastructure on, the Waterbury line, the bridges, there's I-91 and 95. We'd rather see the infrastructure going into actual projects that can open up, I'm going to say, Connecticut's arteries, rather than things like, I'm going to say, maybe a streetscape or things of that nature that don't actually contribute to the direct economic benefit. And we need to make sure that that accountability is there, because there's another initiative that we haven't really touched on, and that is to make sure that whenever we do invest in our transportation system, that it's done in a green manner, that we start to reduce our greenhouse emissions and our footprint. And we have a unique opportunity here while we're talking about mass transit, but to also look at investing in electric charging, electric vehicles, and making sure that as we grow, we move forward, we do it in a smart and green fashion. So I think have a unique opportunity. We got to be mindful and use it, but we can do it if we think ahead. We can avoid many of the labor shortages that may result from that. Build a workforce here that could continue to help our labor and our economy even after these funds are done, because we do have the world's best labor right here. That's why we make the world's best helicopter in my district. We make nuclear submarines. We're very talented, and we need to capitalize on that.
Thank you. Senator Ciccarelli and then Senator Cohen in the order of the hands that went up.
Thank you. And so the question I think was in the beginning is how do we get people back to work and fill some of these jobs that are out there? And it's a lot of jobs in my area. It's from a Dairy Queen to chiropractor offices where they need clerical staff, and we need to get creative and we do need to communicate. I think there's a lot of overlap. We talked about funding, and there's a lot of overlap with funding. I was recently on a call with the Office of Workforce Strategies, which is the group that the governor put together to allocate where the $110 million will go. And we're talking about workforce development. And a lot of that conversation was talking about housing, transportation, childcare, which is all very important. But we already have state agencies that assist in that. So it is communication. It is key. But when we have this opportunity and extra money, we need to be creative We need to find a way to get the individuals back to work. What I see and hear from people in my district, whether it's the people themselves or the employers, people are denying the opportunity to come back to work or work more hours. And it's due to the benefit cliff. We need to encourage people to go to work. People are nervous to make a little bit of extra money because they're going to lose their benefits. And whether that's health, housing, food, etc. My predecessor worked on something called Urban Agenda, I believe, and it talked about a benefit cliff. So we would be able to encourage people to go back to work and not punish them. And I think we need to, for an immediate action to be taken, is to take advantage of the influx of money and to find a way to encourage people to go to work. There are people that can go to work that just simply don't want to because unemployment, they're getting enough money to survive. They're getting enough to stay home and still make it by. And that's not good. We want to encourage people to go to work because clearly everybody sees all the help wanted signs. So I think that we need to get creative and start looking at ways to promote people going to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cohen, you were next up.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And I just wanted to sort of piggyback on what Senator Kelly was talking about and this unique opportunity that we have with the federal infrastructure bill. In particular, we already had a lot going on in terms of some of our community rail programs. We can take advantage of those additional dollars now that will be made available to us. And I agree with Senator Kelly wholeheartedly that we need to be really smart about how we're investing those dollars. Something that has come up already this morning, and I see a question in the chat from Rich Jacob, which is a good question about the bipartisan infrastructure program and whether or not we have the dollars here in Connecticut, because there are points in that bill, parts of that bill. For example, something that's near and dear to me is making sure that we're addressing climate change and having climate mitigation techniques in there to reduce our emissions. We are not meeting our global greenhouse gas emissions reductions that we are supposed to. We are not in attainment of our air quality standards. And that means we need to do everything that we can here in Connecticut to reduce transportation emissions, which account for the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. Within that federal infrastructure bill, there's things on alternative fuel corridors, making sure that we have charging stations available, reducing range anxiety, getting people into electric vehicles, into affordable electric vehicles. We have a carbon reduction program that's outlined in the infrastructure bill that talks about reducing transportation emissions. And you do that by working on highways, solving for congestion problems, traffic light, streamlining, things of this nature that are very expensive. And yes, this infrastructure bill is a godsend in so many ways. It's giving us the much needed dollars that we need to improve upon this infrastructure. But those two programs that I just mentioned require Connecticut to have a match. We need a dollar match in order to do that. And do we have a pool of money to draw from at this point? No, we don't. Without the passage of TCI, programs like that really are difficult for us to fund. So I'm glad to hear Senator Kelly's commitment to sort of a green transportation system. And I'm hopeful that we can work in a bipartisan way to make sure that we are combating and addressing climate change through transportation emissions so that we can act on the opportunities that are being afforded to us through this federal infrastructure package and create those matching funds required to, solve for carbon emissions, making sure that we're really addressing the traffic congestion on the highways and making sure that we have alternative fuels and electric charging stations where they aren't right now. So that'll be really important as we go forward and so important to business in Connecticut and our economy for sure.
Thank you. Garrett, you were going to jump in with a question.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And thank you, everyone. And just to summarize, I mean, we're getting a lot of activity on the chat, and we can't get to every specific question, but a lot around workforce, hearing in different industries as well. I saw energy efficiency come up, that type of workforce. We know it's in the service industry. Healthcare is a huge issue, especially right now as we deal with the surge. Just to tie that into an issue that I think has also been brought up, and Senator Looney, I'll toss this question to you. This is an incredible opportunity with all the funding that has come to Connecticut, but as Senator Kelly said, every state has that opportunity, and really it's almost a competition among the states of who is going to best use that money and come out at the end with the most innovative uses, the most efficient uses. So in terms of the process of the legislature, how will the legislature work to make sure that, not so much from that we do know we have to worry about criminal uses or misuse, but how do we use this money so it really makes a big difference in Connecticut? Is that an oversight role that you see the legislature taking on this session?
Well, I think the discussion here today has highlighted the areas that we should be spending money on when we have it, or with this surge of federal investment. So, for instance, as was mentioned, the need for childcare, which is so expensive in so many cases that it undermines the incentive to work, especially in jobs that don't pay a great deal. The need for to improve our connections with employers, as Senator Ciccarella said. We need to be able to have more placement of high school seniors in internships and apprenticeship programs. I think Germany for years has been a model of how they link up people in school with the jobs they're going to have immediately after they graduate from school. I think we have resources to apply to things like that now, and we know what it is that will be helpful. We also need, as was said by Senator Cabrera and Senator Maroney in particular, the need for wraparound services, to invest in those. We have so many people now who have difficulty getting to work. Transportation is a core problem. There are census tracts in New Haven and elsewhere where more than 45% of the residents do not have cars, and commuting patterns have changed. As we all know, that there are now many people commuting to work from New Haven to places in the suburbs that have malls and factories. We know that the commuting balance shifted some years ago, that there are now more New Haven residents commuting out to work in North Haven than the other way around. And yet, if someone is working an odd shift or something along those lines, often they have difficulty linking up with public transportation to get to and fro. So these are problems that we know exist. DOT, I think, has been challenged for years to revise its bus schedules, to check what is the reality now that commuting patterns have changed. I know that Commissioner Giletti is sensitive to that. We need to have ongoing monitoring, but I think we know what we should prioritize. We do have more resources now with the federal infusion of funds to attack these problems, because we know what they are, and we know the things that work and things that we have not put enough investment in the past, because frankly we didn't have the money. Now we can step up that investment in things that have been identified in this conversation that we know that we need to do, and now have the resources to do.
Thanks, Senator. And I know as we're talking about workforce, we shouldn't be remiss that the state itself is facing a huge workforce issue coming this year. It's been called a retirement tsunami, and we'll see what that actually ends up being. But question about how is the state preparing for it? I know also several union contracts may be coming before the legislature this session. And so open up to you, Senator Looney, and then anyone else on the panel about how we're going to address, and not all of those positions may be filled, maybe other ways that that work gets done. And so what is the legislature looking at for that?
Well, that is a severe challenge, because we are likely to lose a lot of experienced people who have a lot of knowledge that will be walking out the door with them when they retire. And that's a great risk. In some departments, we've already had a downsizing or a hollowing out from within that has impaired the mission. I know for years, the Department of Transportation has gradually had an erosion of their staff of engineers and project managers. I know that former Commissioner Frankel, when he had returned to office for a while, when he was leaving, came to see me and said that in some ways we're not able to meet all of our mission. We had a severe problem a few years ago, if you recall, on a contract for work that was being done on I-84. It turns out drains were installed properly, so it created a flooding problem, and the whole work had to be redone. And in examining that, it turned out that not only did DOT have to contract out the actual work, but it also contracted out the supervision of that work. And that, I think, is potentially dangerous. So we are going to have to step up and hire a lot in a lot of these departments to replace people who are retiring. There'll obviously be an experience gap there initially, but that's going to be a challenge for us for the next several years.
Anyone else want to jump in on that, on the state workforce and how those needs are going to be addressed going forward in this year? Go ahead, Senator Kelly.
Sure. Well, I think this is a real unique opportunity. You have an opportunity that as this, I'm going to say, part of our employee corps retire and move on, it gives you an opportunity to look at what do you do, how do you do it, and are there efficiencies built into this? Just like companies do on a daily basis. You look at what you have, where you are with either revenue or expenditures, and are there ways to save, but yet still get the job done? And I think that's the position the state's in now. I know that right now there is an initiative underfoot to bring all the IT under the Department of Administrative Services. That's an opportunity to take, instead of having each department have their own IT, bring it into one place and look at the economies of scale, bring new eyes to the process, and in the way, start to look at, can we create efficiencies across the state workforce? It's an opportunity to change the mindset also of the state, because with such a large exodus of employees, you have an opportunity to change the mindset. And when you replace individuals, maybe it could be a little bit more customer service oriented, customer friendly oriented. So when you go to DMV or DSS or wherever you have a nexus with the state, that it's a more, I'm going to say, positive experience. I mean, many of us go and you wait hours in line at DMV only to be frustrated and be sent away to come back. This is an opportunity to start to change that gestalt. And we need to seize on that and make sure that as we move forward, the customer, the taxpayer, remains first and foremost, and that we deliver services in a more effective, efficient, and better way.
I'm glad you mentioned DMV, because I think that's something that everyone looks to see. Is there a way to make things better and easier there? But I want to follow up on there was a chat question that came in from one of our members, to also think about this is probably an opportunity, like you said, as we look at our state departments and think about new ways to sort of reinvent them, because we're going to need to also think about how the departments in the past have not really thought about inequalities and fairness in terms of some of our populations. That maybe this is an opportunity to see how do we operate these departments in a way that is more equitable throughout our population. I'm just, if someone has some thoughts on that, I think it's to weigh in. Senator Maroney, I see you waved over there too on that one. You're muted.
You would think I'd remember to unmute. It's only 2 years into the pandemic, right? So, and I just want to jump back to a few things before I address that question. One, I think we've heard a few people talk about childcare, and I think when we look at childcare, that is both a short-term and a long-term solution for workforce, because if providing quality childcare, one, parents, if they know their children are safe, right, they're going to be more productive. It relieves stress and allows them to get back into the workforce now. But dollar for dollar, the best thing we can do long-term, studies have shown for workforce development, is high quality early childhood education. And so that is important. I also wanted to go back to, the loss of the employees and looking at that as, as Senator Looney mentioned, it's a tremendous loss of human capital. Across the state, when you go and you've heard many of us senators and representatives talk about the different agencies we've met with, there are so many passionate employees of the state, mission-driven, passionate employees. Unfortunately, we're going to lose some of that capital, but it is also an opportunity. And I did see someone put in the chat about contracting with the nonprofits, and that's actually one of the things I've been thinking about is, we need to look at this as an opportunity to, in some ways, build a scalable government. And I think as we saw during the pandemic, all of a sudden we needed more people, right? So how are we able to scale up? And I think that's with looking at how we better contract with nonprofits for services. And one of the things I've been looking at is out of the Harvard Government Performance Lab, there's a concept called active contract management, where they're working with the nonprofits, bringing the different nonprofits together. And so instead of just giving a contract and then sending a payment at the end, managing it throughout the process. So you're bringing together people to share best practices, make sure we're on target. So again, I think we've heard a lot of that accountability and transparency talked about, mentioned by a few of the senators. But you also mentioned, this is another great opportunity for looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right. And I think there was a recent article, and I've actually just started part-time in getting an MPA. And the article quoted one of the professors, Muhammad Al-Qadri. I can't pronounce his last name, but in terms of looking at this as an opportunity, look at some of the agencies are doing a good job at this and some are not. So I think one of the keys is being conscious of this as we move forward and looking at it as we do hire to make sure that we are including the underrepresented and identifying that talent, trying to find that talent where it may be and going out and more actively recruiting with the mind towards that diversity, equity, and inclusion. So thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Paul, you have your hand up. You're next.
Great, thank you. So on that topic with the possibility and likely mass retirement in a lot of departments, certain departments, for example, I had a great conference called the Commissioner of the DOC, and they're looking at a very large amount of retirees. And unfortunately, that's something where nonprofits and private sector can't come into place, or the utilization of technology. But as Senator Kelly mentioned, there is opportunity to bring in different types of technology that would expedite some of the services that our constituents and taxpayers really need, and may expedite things. Also, as was mentioned, nonprofits, they do so much for Connecticut with so little all too often. And we should take some of their experience doing that and help them help us really find a way to fill that gap with this mass amount of retirees, and maybe not make the same mistake. We have a very large pension obligation, and we're going to see that when everybody retires, and there's a couple of union contracts that are expiring, so we'll see that. Maybe find a way, again, to utilize nonprofits, technology, and more importantly, like a lot of people on this call, small businesses or other types of companies that could come in and help the state do things more efficiently and less expensive for the taxpayer, especially long-term when it comes to pensions and those types of obligations. So that's definitely something that should be discussed.
Thanks, Senator Chicarello.
Thank you. Garrett.
So we'll hit our last topic of the morning, and by no means a small one, the issue of taxes, tax relief for the next session. Part of that coming from that we do have surpluses, and we've had surpluses for the last few years. We still know we have long-term obligations that need to be taken care of. I know Senator Kelly has a proposal on tax relief. I believe the governor as well. There have been several other proposals that are starting to come out. And also I've seen some groups that have said they're going to advocate on tax fairness issues. And I believe CBIA is going to be pushing for a reduction of business taxes, which we as a chamber support. So let me open that question. Maybe Senator Kelly, I'll start with you because I know you put a proposal out just the other day. And then open that up to everyone else on the panel who wants to comment on how we're going to deal with these surplus funds and if that comes in the form of tax relief.
Thank you very much. I'm going to kind of start or answer where I started, which is, we need to make Connecticut affordable. That's one thing I hear across the board, whether I'm talking to families, individuals, or businesses. Connecticut's unaffordable and it hurts our jobs. So we got to look at ways to make Connecticut more affordable. And here's a perfect example. We have the highest inflation in 40 years. Because of that inflation, the cost of goods and services in our state are increasing. I mean, the family is hemorrhaging. The budget, that the kitchen table economics are tough to meet. That people are living paycheck to paycheck. And yet our state budget is currently balanced. We have a historic rainy day fund at historic levels, and that's because in the bipartisan budget of 17, the Republicans insisted on having that volatility cap and made sure that money got into the rainy day fund. Well, this is a way we proposed a cut in the sales tax from 6.35 down to 5.99 and take the windfall that the state budget is benefiting from because of inflation and returning it back to the taxpayers now. The reason for that is that a sales tax cut can be implemented fast. It can be available to everyone, and it's something that we can do as early as February 15th, and it would run through the end of the year. And that's something I think would help families now. And that's what we're looking for. We're certainly not closed to any further tax relief. I think we've always been, as Republicans, looking at fiscal responsibility and the way to do things better at a less expensive or more efficient manner, much the same way businesses operate. And we would certainly look at all other ideas, but I think this is something that we can do fast. It can give relief to everyone. You don't have to own property. You don't have to claim a credit. You don't have to pay a tax first to get a break back. It's something that every family in Connecticut can take its advantage of and would help, I think, during this high inflationary time.
Thanks, Senator Kelly. Senator Looney, first question is, do you expect some form of tax relief in this session? And then if so, what form are you in favor of?
I do expect there will be some tax relief, and I think that we need to focus on the issue of property taxes in Connecticut. That when you ask people, when they say, well, our taxes are high, when you dig down on that and ask which tax do people find the most burdensome, it's not any tax directly levied by the state, but it is the local property tax, which we know is not sensitive to the earnings of people. If you own a piece of property, you're liable for whatever the taxes are. If you have a two-income couple managing their expenses fairly well, all of a sudden one of them retires or becomes ill or becomes unemployed, suddenly that property tax burden may be unsustainable. So the governor has talked about restoring and expanding some of the property tax credits against the income tax. I think that's something that we should do. There are other, I think, progressive approaches to revenue. Certainly the sales tax issue, I think, could be looked at in combination with some other things. But I think we really do need to look at property tax relief, since that is the tax that people find the most burdensome. And part of it is because municipalities have to rely upon that because they have not been able to get sufficient amount of state aid over the years that would offset their reliance on the property tax.
All right, thank you. As we start to wrap up here, I want to get to the rest of our panel, and Senator Cabrera, I'll start with you. So if you want to comment on this tax issue or anything else you want to leave the audience with this morning.
Thank you, Garrett, and thank you to the Chamber and all my colleagues and fellow panelists for bringing us together today. Yeah, Senator Lou's correct. I think we're definitely going to see some tax relief in this coming session. For me, I think, one thing that's top of mind, and I think we can all agree on this, is that we have a real unique opportunity here. This pandemic has laid bare what many of us have been talking about for years, and that is the incredible economic inequality that exists in Connecticut. And it has exposed fissures that were already there that our working class families and middle class families are struggling with. We can go down the list, whether we're talking about the gap in our mental health infrastructure, back at the property taxes or regressive tax, which Senator Looney alluded to. We began to address that with the pilot bill that Senator Looney championed and we were able to pass. Coupled with these record level of investment coming with the infrastructure bill, the possibility of child tax credits being extended at the federal level. If that doesn't happen, I hope that we can do something at the state level. And then childcare, which Senator Maroney alluded to as well, which we all know women have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic because of childcare. And we've got to find a way to address that. And if the federal government doesn't do it, I hope that we can find a way to do it here in the state of Connecticut. That, coupled with helping our small and mid-sized businesses emerge out of this pandemic stronger, whether it's the workforce development investments we've talked about, all these things, this entire ecosystem is all important. But I think we do have a very unique opportunity here because our budget is balanced. We have record surpluses. We've made record investments in our long-term pension obligations. Now is the time for Connecticut to take advantage of this breathing room that we have to really tackle the structural inequalities in our state to make sure that working class and middle class families can thrive, and we can get more people into the middle class and really start to tackle these gaps and all the things that we've been talking about here today. So I'm excited about it. I think opportunities like this in politics don't come up often. The pandemic has been difficult. Our hearts, go out to all those people who have lost loved ones and have suffered through this pandemic. But I also think that in great crisis come great opportunities, and I'm looking forward to debating these issues and working with my colleagues across the aisle to take advantage of this opportunity we have here in Connecticut.
Thanks, Senator Cabrera. Appreciate you being on with us. Senator Cohen, just a moment for a last word.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks, Garrett and the Greater New Haven Chamber for hosting this. It's always a great opportunity to hear from others, hear from my colleagues on what they're thinking as we get ready to jump into a new session, and hear from businesses about what's on their mind as we move forward. Because as I said before, that's really the most important driver, is hearing from the residents and business owners across the state of Connecticut that helps really determine and shape what the legislative session will look like. After all, we are elected to represent the people of the state of Connecticut. And so that's incredibly important. So thank you for pulling us all together. It's a great opportunity for us to share ideas and listen to one another. In terms of tax relief, I think this next legislative session, just as the last legislative session, we really need to be pandemic focused. We all thought this would be over by now. It is by no means over. We're in the midst of a surge with a new variant, which hopefully between that and vaccination, we can start to see endemic coming, and we adjust to a new way of living with COVID-19 and its various shapes and forms. I hope that is the case. We'll certainly have science leading us there, and we'll be listening along the way and doing what we can and reacting accordingly. But I think that the pandemic is certainly going to shape the next session. We're going to need to be talking about COVID relief. Our businesses continue to be impacted by this, some in good ways and some in very detrimental ways to their health. And so we really need to look at that and how that impacts the economy. Working families, how are they experiencing this, job loss, all of these things come into play. And so we're really going to need to be mindful of that. By the same token, as my colleagues have just said, we're in a great position here in Connecticut. We've filled the rainy day fund. We've been able to pay down long-term debt. We have this federal infrastructure package, which is terrific for us, ARPA dollars that we're still investing. And so all of these things combined, put us in a really great position to help out the people of Connecticut and make sure that we strengthen our economy even further. So I think we'll see a lot of that this coming session. I hope we see tax credits for business expansion. We have been able to do a lot with taxes for small businesses. I think we can go even deeper. Giving sales tax relief was something we saw last session for a couple of sales tax free weeks. We've been able to award grant dollars. I saw some folks talking about arts, culture, and tourism, so important to the vitality and health of the economy here in Connecticut. And so we've just awarded some grant dollars that were a result of the bipartisan budget. So really pleased about that. We can go further, and earned income tax credit, really diving in there. Can we go even deeper there to help out working families? And as Senator Looney said, taking a deeper dive into property taxes and where can we provide some relief to our residents across the state. So I'm looking forward to a robust session, and hopefully we can get ourselves to a much better place in health, in terms of the pandemic as we move forward. So thanks again, Garrett.
Thanks, Senator Conley.
Thank you.
Senator Chigarella, just a quick word before we close out.
Sure. I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to address all the great business owners and members of the chamber. You guys do a great job informing the businesses of legislative issues and other topics. I think I pointed that out before. You're a great help to my business and other colleagues in my profession throughout the pandemic. Again, great job, and thank you for inviting myself and my colleagues to address you guys. We're talking about tax relief, and I'll try to be brief. It's three phases. Right now, we really need to help, our residents with inflation and all of the other challenges that we're facing. I think we need to do something immediately, and I think the Senate Republicans did put together a pretty good plan to help address this and give some relief immediately. And I think that really needs to be looked at. Next is no more taxes, especially for our middle class, and no more cost of doing business for the businesses that are already suffering so much. And I think we need to make sure that we really look at ways to decrease spending, which ultimately will lower taxes long term. We do it in our businesses every day. I do it for other businesses. I own an investigation agency, and we do loss prevention all the time. And it's seeing where we're wasting money and where it could be reallocated. I think we need to take advantage of the financial situation we're in, and I think that's a way to do it. And thank you again, everybody, for your time.
Thanks.
Senator Maroney, I'll give you the last word.
Thanks, Garrett. And again, just to echo the sentiments, thank you to my colleagues for the discussion, and thank you to your members for bringing these issues before us. And I think one of the most hopeful things I had heard was at the beginning when Joe Bertolino was saying that Southern is shifting from containment to mitigation. Right. So how are we going to learn to live with this and moving forward to that next phase of the pandemic? As far as proper, tax relief, I think whatever we do, we need to be very thoughtful. My father was a retired accounting professor. He focused in behavioral accounting. And one of the things we know about taxes is that they motivate behaviors. And we want to make sure that whatever we do, that the behaviors we're motivating, and people make irrational decisions a lot of times to avoid paying taxes for whatever the reason, but that we're not doing things short term that are going to impact us long term. And I think we talked about the costs. We know one of the largest line items are our pension expenses. And so I think continuing to pay down the pensions is prudent. I think looking at the property taxes, as Senator Looney mentioned, from the first day you open up, you're paying property taxes. Other taxes you don't pay until you make money or you spend something, but that property tax starts, from day one for a business. I think, as Senator Cohen mentioned, we need to, in this session, continue looking at, recovering from the pandemic. I think one of the things I want to look at, that it was brought to me by one of the restaurants in my district, is extending the outdoor dining for restaurants, which has been tremendously successful. I think, again, the silver linings, one of the positives from the pandemic is finding ways to stay outside longer and make more use of the outdoor spaces. Dan Fitzmaurice had mentioned a few times, I saw the arts, and Senator Cohen also alluded to this, but we know, unfortunately, we may be at the tip of a looming mental health crisis. As people were wired to be together, I think the isolation has taken a toll on all of our mental health. And one of the ways we get out of this is by coming back together. The arts bring people together. One of the ways for keeping these new residents here is by making sure we're providing vibrant cultural opportunities. So I do see it as critical to continue to invest in the arts. Thank you again.
Thanks, Senator Maroney. And Senator Kelly and Senator Looney, appreciate you being here. Just one very quick question for you. Will the legislature be open? How will people be able to access government going into this session? I'm sure an undecided question.
Well, I'll take it at this point. It's too soon to tell because everything is so volatile. We've seen our situation now is very different than it was a month ago. Who knows what it'll be a month from now. Last year we had the challenge, of course, the vaccines were just starting to become available at the time the session began. We had to be very careful because if we had any kind of an outbreak among members or staff, we would have had to shut down the operation. We only have a limited time in which to operate, even more limited this year, as I said at the beginning, only 12 weeks. So we have to be very careful. I think at the very beginning, we'll probably be operating in a way that relies upon virtual presentations. I hope that we will be able to open up as we go along if situations improve to have more of a traditional session, but it really is too soon to tell.
Senator Kelly, very last word.
Okay, just on that, it is the people's government, and we need to make it more accessible to them. Mindful of a pandemic, we still need to give people an opportunity to truly participate because there's no place to congregate in a virtual reality. You need to actually be physically present. But just in closing, I'd just like to say thank you to all the members. Thank you for not only sharing their morning with us and listening to our ideas, but also thank you for putting the key in the door every day, opening up, staying at work, getting the job done, and allowing our families a place to go to work and earn a living. Without the efforts that you do on a day-to-day basis, the Connecticut economy wouldn't be where it is today. And so it's a heartfelt thank you to all of you. Keep up the good work. We've had a lot of challenges in the last 2 years. It demonstrates the creativity and the resilience of Connecticut's, not only industry, but our labor. And as much as we've had a lot of difficulties, I think tomorrow is still going to be bright and we're going to have a better Connecticut for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Kelly. And thank you to all our legislators. Jim, thank you so much for moderating. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. Have a great rest of your day and good luck in the upcoming session.
And I'll just let everyone know, if you want to join our Government Affairs Committee, and a big thank you to everyone on our Government Affairs Committee, please get in touch with Katie Ambrosio. She's our public policy specialist, a great addition here to the team and helped organize so much of this event, along with the rest of our chamber staff who did a great job putting this together. If you want to see our legislative agenda that's being mailed out to everyone who attended, you can also stay connected with us. You can text GNHCC, that'll get you updates onto all of our programs. So make sure you do that. That information also available on our website. Want to give one last big thank you to all of our sponsors, AT&T, Connecticut, and Southern Connecticut State University, also Halloran Sage, Fuss & O'Neill, Alexion AstraZeneca, Global Partners, and Story Real Studios. We do have one more of these events coming up. It's going to be on January 26th. We'll be talking with members of the House of Representatives in the state. And we do have other things going on at the chamber. Our executive orientation is coming up. So if you're interested in participating in that, please contact Tamika or reach out to me. And finally, we do have our internship and career fair. We talked so much about workforce today. This is our opportunity to put students and also anyone looking for a job in front of employers. That is coming up at the end of February. Hope everyone has a great day. Thank you again for sticking with us. Thanks so much, everyone.